ahead. It has just been over a week since Malaysian Air Flight 17 was shot down. But breaking today, word that Russia could be sending rocket launchers into Ukraine to those pro-Russian rebels, and it could happen as early as today. Plus, just ahead, my next guest says Vladimir Putin wanted him dead or in a cage. He is the former president of Georgia. He went to war with Russia. Mikheil Saakashvili joins me live on his advice to get Putin to listen. You're watching CNN's special coverage. Stay with me. And I just want to ask you about Putin the man. He's kind of a mystery to a lot of people, Mr. President. And you famously said that Vladimir Putin wanted you caged or killed.
Well, he wanted to hang me by certain balls of the...
I wasn't going to go there, but...
certain
you can go
parts
there.
of my body. I said it, but actually he said it many times publicly. But the reality is, yeah, he likes to intimidate.
That was some pretty frank talk from my conversation earlier this week with the former president of the Republic of Georgia, and he would know. He went toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin back in 2008. Georgia felt Putin's wrath as it became friendlier to the West. Pro-Russian rebels fought with Georgian troops, and at one point, Putin even sent troops into eastern Georgia. And if it sounds familiar, it's because it is, because it could be the playbook for what's happening right now in Ukraine. We'll dig deeper into that in a moment. But first, here's the news today. The U.S. is raising the alarm. The Pentagon says Russia is getting ready to transfer more powerful rocket launchers into the hands of pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine. And according to this U.S. intel, it could happen as early as today. Europe's leaders are meeting again today in Belgium. The U.S. and others want them to impose tougher sanctions on Russia. But Western Europe is in a tough spot because it relies heavily on Russian gas to meet its energy needs. And for now, the Europeans are just targeting some of the rich and powerful in Russia by freezing them out of dealings with the West. So how to deal with Vladimir Putin? How does the world get him to listen? Let's bring in former Georgian President Mikheil Saakashvili, senior statesman at the Tufts University's Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. Mr. President, welcome back.
Thank you. I mean, I would like to reply to this slip of the tongue I had inadvertently last time at your show. Actually, I still feel much better than most of Vladimir Putin's alleged real or prospective victims, as I'm sitting here in New York in the studio and talking to you. But unfortunately, that's not the case with many other people that right now, as we speak, have been dying for the last several hours in Ukraine. And I had a conversation with, I was in Washington talking to top lawmakers, to top key senators, and then sat down with the a senior level team of the State Department that deals with the issue. And I just, again, they spoke to me now and they told me that it's getting heavier with every hour, the shelling and the toll of victims.
On that issue, you mentioned Washington. This is coming out of the Pentagon today. Of course, we know not even a week ago, 298 people were basically shot out of the sky. And now we're getting the news from the Pentagon, from intelligence, that Russia's bringing in more rocket launchers to Ukraine. What is Vladimir Putin doing?
Well, we should see, first of all, he's out to undermine the Cold War order, but it's not the issue. The main thing what he's doing in Ukraine is continuation of what he has been doing for all these years in all different places. On Ukraine, he has, first he sent in some small amount of troops and stir up trouble, but then Ukraine sent in more troops. So he had to counter that. He wants Ukraine's military defeat. He wants to kill Ukraine's economy. He wants people to turn against their government. He cannot allow Ukraine to succeed. So once Ukraine brought in artillery, he brought in artillery. Once Ukraine started to pound these people, the Russian special troops and the local rebels from the air, they brought in anti-air equipment. So actually, he has been all the time taking the lead in order not to allow Ukrainians to succeed. But that's nothing new. You rightly said, it's like from blueprint from what he has been doing in the past. Even more, I mean, people at these days have been saying also on your, they've been remembering all the old tragedies which shot down planes, but they never mentioned that in the 90s, the Russian rebels, pro-Russian rebels and Russian special troops shot down 2 civilian planes in Georgia at the airport of Sukhumi in Abkhazia. One of them, by the way, full of refugee women and children trying to leave the place, and actually 500,000 people did leave the place. These ones didn't succeed. And it took people 10 years to find the graves of the victims. And so there were other tragedies with participation of Russians. simply they got away with that.
The obvious question, which we already tried to address earlier in the week, and you give all these examples, is how to stop him. So we've already discussed stricter sanctions. We've talked money throughout Europe. But really, I'm wondering today, since you've gone toe-to-toe with him, is his ego. I mean, people have already brought up the fact the World Cup, you know, set in some years in Russia. If the World Cup were to be pulled out, do you think that would make him listen?
Yes, there are many things that could be done. He, and especially the elite around him, are very, very vulnerable to Russian pressure. Look, he wants to rule and attack like Stalin, but wants to live like American billionaires or some other, you know, Arab sheikhs. So he has this natural longing towards capitalists, which most of the rogue regime leaders don't have. Now, Russia might be becoming a rogue country and rogue regime, but they still have this tremendous intoxication and infatuation with Western culture and Western way of life. So yes, indeed, there are lots of leverage. But you know,
give me examples, sir. Can you give me examples of leverage? Not talking money. If he's living like a billionaire, he certainly is, and a lot of people in Russia, especially even the Netherlands. I mean, 200 people died on that plane from the Netherlands, and they're reluctant to be part of the group slapping additional sanctions on Russia. So let's just put money to the side. What else could it be?
Well, look, first of all, there should be a reaction to concrete actions. You know, he got away with occupation of, I mean, almost nobody mentions today, for instance, that 20% of Georgia is still occupied. Least of all, by the way, the Russian-leaning Georgian government that basically yesterday said, we cannot support Ukraine, by the way, now because we have to get back to good relations with Russia. The problem is that, you know, he managed to make the world to forget that he occupies another country's sovereign territory. Now, then he occupied Crimea. Again, nothing was done. And people don't talk anymore about Crimea. So if there had been proper sanctions about Crimea, that would have made a difference.
We talked plenty about Crimea, and I've talked to so many different journalists who covered Ukraine. You did.
It's not about it. But no real action was taken.
No real. I understand, and it seems to get worse and worse and worse, and that's why I'm asking
now people are telling them, give us access to crash site, and obviously this barbarism that's happening there is outrageous. But again, yeah, and so people now are focused on the plane, but the situation in eastern Ukraine kind of gets reaction, but kind of plane totally eclipses. So so overall, he has been moving to new things, and you know, for all that, but he also has very clear program. I had many meetings with him, and he always told me several things. He told me that he would invade Georgia because he told me he would make a northern Cyprus to us. He did, actually. He always told me that Ukraine is not a real country, and by the way, once when we were in Crimea, he mentioned to me that Crimea is Russian land, implying that it's just temporarily
Ukraine. He called it Russian land.
Yes, he said it's a beautiful Russian land, and remember this, and they said it's a temporary situation.
Does he believe that, or was he just trying to irk you?
I think he believes it, that he has to take revenge for what he regards as the United States defeating Soviet Union and Russia in Cold War. And then he always said that he would undermine NATO and destroy NATO, and the surest way for it is to continue his aggressive actions towards the Baltic countries. So he has been lying all the way through, but he has never been lying about his main goals. He has been indicating those goals, saying that this very clearly to his people, but also to the Westerners, or also to his neighbors, like to myself. But then, of course, he has been lying his way through deceit, through corruption, through manipulating some former or existing European leaders. So Europe can, but by the way, it looks like Europe finally, will do something, and that would be a big breakthrough. Because
I hope to have that conversation with you next time, Mr. President.
Eventually, he will break his neck, but we need the world to suffer, and we need these people not to suffer where we don't want not to suffer such losses as it's suffering now.
Absolutely agree. Mikheil Saakashvili,
thank you.
Thank you so much. Come back, as always. You are a wealth of information, having met this man multiple times and gone to war with him. Thank you so much.